Next up, we're going to talk about the top risk facing auto dealers in 2024. And the subtitle for that is the auto inventory loss, large losses, talent, and more. So that's a lot of good information there. To help us do that and to lead that conversation, I'd like to welcome up to the stage, make sure you give her a big round of applause, Marie Knight. Marie, are you ready? All right, stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I would like to bring some great panelists up to join me. If you would please welcome Phil Rasu, Zurich Direct Market Head of Sales. Rob Smith from the Fitzgerald Auto Mall, headquartered in Rockville, Maryland. And Oliver Broadleib from East Hills Auto Group in Greenvale, New York. So have a seat, gentlemen. How are you doing this afternoon? Great.
Good.
So thanks for joining us. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to attend the Auto Team America Dealer Forum, where I was really happy to hear that the economic outlook for our industry is still pretty positive. That said, there's been some unprecedented change in the world, and there's a lot going on. And dealers are faced with all sorts of adversity and an evolving world that affects the way that you do business every day. So understanding the risks and opportunities and their potential impact on dealers to protecting their bottom line is really important. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into that and chat a little bit about some of the challenges that are top of mind. So there's been a lot of change and challenges in the industry over the past few years. We've come out of the pandemic, and we're getting used to a new normal. And I believe it's made dealers more adaptable than ever before and able to face the challenges and really create business resilience. So let's talk about some of the things that you're thinking about this year. And Phil, if I could start with you. We're 1 month into 2024. What's top of mind for Zurich? And as you think about helping dealers navigate the risk and maximize profit, what are you really focusing on?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I really appreciate that question. So, there's risks that carry over from year to year. Some of these risks evolve over time, and new ones emerge. We are constantly in conversation with our dealers on how to navigate these risks. We're in communication with the risks that have emerged and the ones that evolved. Some of these risks do include things like talent and retaining employees. In addition to dealer profits, they're always on our mind. And then when you think about the large loss area, we think about fire losses. We think about climate-related losses, which are happening more and more. Then we think about technology and we think about cyber security. That's on dealer minds right now. In addition to that, we have our large losses of changing in auto inventory, which includes electric vehicles. How are we managing the risk with electric vehicles, with battery storage and so forth? So they're the things that are on top of mind of Zurich right now.
That's a lot to think about. So Rob and Oliver, what's keeping you up at night?
What keeps us up? Well, automotively, every year there's something that keeps us up at night. But as dealers, we're adaptable and we handle it. But going into 24, the things that I think about, interest rates that are a little bit higher than what we've been accustomed to. That has given us a little bit of headwind. Relatively speaking, though, over time, it's really not as high. I mean, I looked back at one of my family videos. My grandfather's probably in the early 80s, was holding my cousin, and he said, "Look at that, 10%, that'll bring him in." Just to put things in perspective. But that's something that, but there are other issues. Direct sales, that is something as a dealer, I think we should all be on guard. Direct sales does not benefit consumers. It doesn't benefit the economy. It doesn't benefit the communities that dealerships serve. So that's something that I think we should be on guard with as well.
All right, very good. Rob, anything to add to that?
I agree. There's always something keeping us up at night. For us, it's managing the flow of information for our consumers and trying to make sure that the data is correct among all the websites that we have to manage. Consumers can find vehicles anywhere, and we have to make sure that we're presenting the product the best way we can with our manufacturer partners. But it's a challenge to make sure the data is correct. So every day we've got to make sure that we're using the right tools, that the data is correct out there, and there is a lot of pressure on the profitability on the front end today that there wasn't before, and that has to be managed.
For sure.
And then lastly, with the pandemic, one of the tools we had to come up with was how to know if we were getting any better. So we had to develop new ways of reporting to know that things were getting back on track. And so the flow of information internally to our team is much, much better than it was before.
It's great. Well, I think it's important to recognize how well dealers have learned to adapt and not just survive, but actually thrive. And I mean, that's certainly a testament to the dealer community, especially with so much change over the past few years. And one critical component to continued success is talent acquisition and talent retention. So dealers continue to experience workforce shortages in sales and service particularly. In some instances, dealers are overpaying to retain their top talent. So, Oliver, what's been your experience with attracting, hiring, and retaining talent? And not just the talent that you're looking for, but what are you doing to really build career paths for the talent that you already have and that you want to keep on board? Are you finding the right people to work in your stores? And then what are you doing to keep them motivated and engaged?
So a few things. Great question. You take care of your employees. Those are our customers. You take care of them, they're going to take care of the customers. What do we do to retain them? Well, we take care of them. What we also do, I mean, one of the things that I left out when you asked about what keeps us up at night, there's a technician shortage. I would say with getting technicians, it is imperative that you start, getting in front of them. Just by the way, technician shortages last year, I hope my numbers are right, we were short 115,000 technicians in the country. That is up from 64,000 from the year before. So that disparity is growing. That is a major concern that we have, especially in the New York metro market where we're having to compete with the municipalities. So that is something that taking care of your employees, it is so important. What we do is we bring them in from an early age through apprenticeships. We work with them, we train them, and we really build them up from the ground up. And that's really, there's no easy way to do it, but that's the right way.
I would agree. You have to start at the very early ages in high school. We have tour groups of students that come through our dealership and teach them about all the different career paths that they have to choose from in the automobile industry. I mean, it's not just technicians, it's people in HR, it's computer specialists, and of course sales, our favorite. But we need to make sure that the young people know that there are opportunities there they might not find out about by learning, sitting in a classroom and applying to college all the time. So we have created a partnership with our local school systems across the different markets, both in Maryland, in Florida, in Pennsylvania, because we want to be part of the trade schools, we want to be teaching, we want to be engaged. Some of our staff are even on their boards in the school systems to help them know what they need to teach in order to make them career ready when they come out.
Yeah. Well, certainly people are a huge part of the industry and really what keeps it going and can certainly impact the profitability of the dealership as well as the customer experience. So it's good that you're making that a top priority. And I think Zurich has the same approach to talent acquisition and retention. Do you have anything to add to that, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look from Zurich as a company, talent and retaining our employees to help the dealer world is vital as well, and making sure that we do the right thing for our employees through massive training programs, clear career path opportunities, and then also in our dealerships we help out with different programs that help them cultivate talent within their dealerships for their next role. So yeah, definitely top of mind for Zurich as well.
Okay, great, thanks. So shifting gears just a bit, some dealers are starting to see a slight decrease in profitability including PVR as the result of economic pressure, the higher interest rates that you mentioned, Oliver, and just general vehicle affordability. So, Rob, given you have stores in 3 markets, is this your experience? Are you seeing a little bit of profit compression?
No, we're having record profits right now. No, it's a different world. It's not, nothing's collapsing. It's normalizing.
Yep.
You know, and I've had to argue with some of our some bankers and some other folks about how could you ever predict that you're going to go down? I said, we're not going down. We're getting back to what is normal, but it's still far above where we were in 2019. So we can't go back to 2019 where we're all cutting each other's throats. And I know Andy Koblenz is around here saying, don't say that, Rob. But we need to make sure that we're providing the value for the customer and giving them the best experience, and consumers will pay for that if you're doing your job well.
Yeah, 100% agree. Oliver, what about you?
I'll piggyback on what Rob said. The sky is not falling. We're still doing pretty well, although I think we all have a tendency to look at what we just recently experienced. But I think we all have to look at it relatively and say, okay, we're not doing as well as we did last year. That's okay. That's normal. You know, business cycles, you know, sort of come and go. But we're certainly doing better than we were pre-COVID. And listen, if you go back, I think you mentioned adaptability. Dealers are adaptable. We'll figure it out. But yeah, there's a little bit of compression, but that's, you know, relatively speaking, it's okay.
Very good. Yeah, I think it's more of a normalizing than anything, and it's still pretty optimistic for all of us, which is a good thing. So the dealership landscape has changed over the last couple of years, certainly, and it has a lot to do with how vehicles themselves are being manufactured. Increased use of plastic, composite, and recycled materials in the manufacturing of new vehicles makes them highly combustible, bringing on new fire risks that we never had to think about before. And then we have the EV technology that's completely different. Utilization and storage of lithium batteries and the presence of charging stations on your lots are just a few of the risks that dealers now have to consider. So what have you done to adapt to these types of changes, and how has that impacted your dealership business as a whole?
Well, I'll start by saying we've invested heavily in our EV infrastructure. We've got chargers. We've carved out space for the batteries. In terms of the risks that are associated with it, we're going to take, you know, we're going to take every precaution through training, and we'll look to our OEMs, we'll look to our vendors and our partners, and we will train ourselves to handle it as safely as possible.
I think, you know, making sure the workplace is safe for our associates is certainly paramount, and we've actually partnered a lot with Zurich and made sure we've gotten a lot better at our practices. But electric vehicles bring in entirely new challenges. We can't build facilities that are as large as this to store batteries. So there are programs out there that we're learning about that are emerging that work with the manufacturers of where to store the batteries so that there's no fire. We have body shops that are taking in electric vehicles that have been in a crash. That's an area of concern. And frankly, there's just not enough discussion in the public about how to prevent these fires and what the best way is to deal with them. I know that we've taken a lead role. Mr. Fitzgerald in particular has reached out to some folks, and no one has answers yet. So I think it's important to keep that dialogue going to make sure that our customers are safe, our employees are safe, and that we just do the best we can as consumer preferences change.
Yeah, and I think it's an area where Zurich is investing as well. We're certainly getting more knowledge and more data every day, and then doing everything we can to help educate our customers so that your dealerships are safe and that you mitigate that risk as much as possible. So we know that dealers are impacted by large losses due to some of the things that Phil mentioned earlier, including cybersecurity breaches, distracted driving, auto theft, climate impact, and the current regulatory environment. So, Rob, I understand that you've invested a lot into cybersecurity education for your employees. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's funny because just this morning, I received an email from 2 employees saying, "I'm sorry I didn't get back to you right away. Do you want me to go get those gift cards?" This is going on every day in our dealerships, and it's amazing as much training as we've tried to provide that people can be fooled. You know, we hear about it in the senior community, my parents, for example, but in the workplace, there's a real danger of somebody sending a wire to someone or sending your license plates to the wrong person. So we have got to protect the privacy of the consumer. And we've certainly used one of the vendors that's here at the show to help provide more education, ongoing training, phishing training to prevent our employees from making that terrible mistake. And it's not a matter of if you're going to get hacked, you're going to get hacked. I mean, I grew up with a father that worked for the government that told me all my calls are being listened to. I found that out at an early age. He was right. So there's going to come a time that you're going to have a problem. You better prepare for it and continue the education process.
Very good. Oliver?
Yeah, no, Rob said it. Listen, training. We have one of the vendors that are at the show. We lean on Zurich, of course, to help us, give us the best chance of not getting hurt by a cyber attack. I mean, that's one of the things, if you want to ask, that keeps me up. You know, finding out that that I don't have the keys to my DMS system and that I'm going to have to pay a rent. I mean, these are things these are real consequences that we face, and it's our reality. So constant training. You know, the signing on to become an employee, you have to go through the training, and then it's constant testing to make sure that we're not clicking the link that the prey is trying to get us to click on. I mean, I did it. I had to take another test to, so it's not beyond any of us to be fooled, but it's constant training. It's our new reality. It's the world we live in.
Well, I have to say, I did it also. Last week, I actually compromised 4 credit cards by entering my information on 4 credit cards to do something that was just, when I think back, not very smart.
But we've also, before, when we started doing the 2-step verification and the encryption and doing all that, when I first heard that we had to do that, I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work. We're busy. But 6 months later, we're doing it. It's a part of what we do. We don't think twice about it. So we've adapted. It's fine, and it's business as usual.
So I would say the key, just to sum up what you both said, is education and then validation.
100%.
Okay.
Amen.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think that's important for all of us to remember.
It's not what you expect. It's what you inspect.
That's right. And then don't enter your credit card information somewhere where you're not sure of. Thanks. Okay. Aside from the cyber security issues, are there any of the other major loss areas that we've talked about that you've been impacted by?
I've had a lot of stolen vehicles. I mean, our security was literally used to be locking the door and then coming in the next morning and saying, okay. Now it has become we have to get AI, we've got to have 24-hour surveillance, any movement on the property, there's someone speaking from another state saying you got to get off the property. But this is our reality. This is what we have to do to best protect the inventory. We want to keep our insurance premiums as low as possible, obviously. So whatever we could do to mitigate those risks, we do. We employ. So it's a new world. We have to protect our inventory. We have to protect it, front and back.
Yeah, my youngest daughter's 18. I found out she had the most impressive fake ID I had ever seen in my life. This is an 18-year-old. So you can imagine what's going on in our showrooms when we get these folks that come in. And thankfully, our trade association has created a way of communicating with everyone about potential theft and fraud and ID theft. It's rampant. We can't go a week without several examples of people pretending to be someone else trying to buy a vehicle. And those are huge losses that take a lot of cooperation with our finance partners, with our banking partners to try to recover those vehicles. And some of them we just can't. I mean, they are very good. They're very organized. So we need to take steps to continue the education and invest in the technology to scan the licenses to make sure that they're valid and make sure that people are who they say they are. And it's a challenge because the customer just wants great service. They want a good experience. But at the same time, we have to teach them we're here to protect your identity. So if they're getting upset about it, maybe there's something that they need to tell us about.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I do think everyone's job is to be vigilant and really double check and make sure that people are who they say they are and that all their documentation is accurate and authentic. All right, very good. Any thoughts on distracted driving and any precautions that you're taking there to make sure you don't have any losses with dealership personnel and distracted driving?
Phil, you could take that.
Phil, do you want to talk about?
I'll just mention we have improved we have a very large wholesale parts operation, and we installed the first time we ever put cameras in vehicles. We were shocked at what we discovered. And we realized that we really did have risk with some of the drivers out there. And to protect them and protect the people on the road and our own reputation, it was important to make sure that was installed in all of them. So that's our biggest challenge, of course, is to make sure that our own delivery drivers are not distracted. But then even with support staff that move cars from lot to lot, if they're on their phone or they're texting, that's an education and an enforcement issue. But that is a concern.
Yeah, when I think about distracted driving, there's two parts, and Rob just touched on it. It's obviously us being out on the roads with other people and getting in accidents, but it's also on your dealership lots, the jockeying cars around, the distraction. So I would highly recommend that you're working with your insurance experts to come up with plans to make sure distracted driving isn't happening. If you have large parts delivery programs or you're doing remote deliveries, cameras, it's causing such a disruption in the insurance world because it's harming individuals. But it's also, when you think about the cost to repair cars today, whether it's a windshield or whether it's a side mirror, these aren't cheap, inexpensive repairs anymore. These are very, very costly repairs. So it's working with your insurance experts to make sure that there's a program in place and there's consequences. So I would highly recommend that you do that.
Great, thank you. So the latest development has moved the FTC cars rule off the front burner, thankfully. I think we were all in a bit of a panic about that until last week or the week prior. We'd like to hear from you. Is this something that you remain concerned about? What changes do you think need to be made so that you are prepared when it goes into effect, if it goes into effect?
Am I concerned? I wouldn't say I'm concerned. First of all, this is a perfect example to show just how important organizations like NADA, your local ATAs, in my case, the Greater New York Automobile Dealers, it is those organizations that push back and educate legislators that this overregulation, while I think it's important to weed out bad actors, and no one wants that for the industry, I think there's a way to do it where it does not put such an overburden on the process. We've learned that consumers want a seamless transaction, a digital, touchless transaction, and from what I've learned, this car rule would just throw that into a tailspin. So, I mean, it's like practice and theory. Theoretically, it makes tons of sense. I think it's great because the industry wants dealers that work in transparency, and transparency is a good thing, not a bad thing. But it has to be done practically, so it can actually work in the real world, in our showrooms, and to allow customers to come in seamlessly, buy a car, and be able to leave. So,
frankly, I'm in the DC metro area, and the folks that write these laws are my customers. And it's very disappointing because we actually knew some of the folks and invited them to go to a dealership and go through the shopping experience. By the way, some of the folks who are writing these laws have never bought a car. That should frighten you a little bit. So they've never shopped for a car. Yet they went through the process and they still came back with some of the same crazy ideas about the disclosures that are going to need to be required. My big concern is it's going to get so crazy, it's going to be like showing it in the back of the contract, and consumers are going to get numb to it. It's not going to mean anything. You know, before the privacy notice was a big deal to give to someone, now it's just everyone gives a privacy notice. It's no big deal. So I'm not sure how it's really going to help consumers when we already have laws on the books to stop the kind of practices, if the states want to enforce the right laws. That's my opinion about it.
So you think that the UDAP laws and all the laws that GLB, all of those already cover what the CARS rule is trying to impose?
Deceptive practices and I mean, no car dealer does that. Honestly, we are pillars in the community, and our reputation is what matters most. If we don't take care of the customer, we go out of business. So I think that there are bad actors. I don't disagree, and they have to be weeded out. But I think there's sufficient statute out there to put the enforcement actions in place to make a difference.
It is interesting to me when you compare the automotive industry to any other type of retail. I don't know if anybody's bought any furniture lately, but I was shopping for a couch. You don't know what the invoice is on that couch. You don't know any of the things that you get to find out about buying a vehicle when you're buying almost anything other than a vehicle. So it is certainly a different level of scrutiny when it comes to vehicle purchases. And I think that, while it's well-intentioned, it might be a bit overkill. So hopefully this delay will allow people to pause and for the rule to make more sense.
Which is why it's so important to really educate these legislators. Like we have at the Greater New York Auto Dealers, we have a 90,000 square foot education center. It was built in 2005. We invested $30 million in this. And what we do from time to time, we invite the legislators in, and we have a beautiful boardroom. And what we'll do is we'll poster up all of the regulations that we have to put in our dealerships. And literally the entire wall is covered. And they look at it and they say, oh yeah, we have to, it sort of puts things, it gives them an idea of just how over-regulated we are and how much overlap there is. In New York City, the state of New York, federal, all of it's overlapping. The Attorney General, DCA, Consumer Affairs, and they're all asking for, it really is it's an eye-opening, and it's good for them to see it, because I don't think they realize it.
Yeah. Great. And great idea to invite them in for a little education. Well, thank you both, Oliver and Rob, for sharing your thoughts with us. And Phil, always thank you as well. For Zurich, it's about making sure our customers have the information they need to protect their bottom line, and how we can help you and all of you generate the most profit, remain compliant, and avoid large losses. So thanks so much to the panelists. Such great info that you shared with the audience today. Please stop by our booth to continue this conversation or to visit the Zurich team. We're at booth 3614 in the West Hall, and we look forward to a great show. Thank you very much.
Good morning.